Teresa Bienken, CEO of National Speakers Bureau Canada and Global Speakers Agency. We envision a world where the sharing of ideas inspires action toward a better future. And we do this through bringing you experts, thought leaders, and those who can inspire, inform, and entertain for your conferences, training sessions, and events, online, hybrid, or in person. And we are ready to zoom into today's session. We're fortunate to learn today from Dave Williams' experience as an ER doctor, hospital chief executive, astronaut, and aquanaut, and really an all-around nice guy. With a passion for healthcare and risk management, Dave Williams' experience includes that as an emergency room doctor and director of emergency services at Sunnybrook in Toronto. He's also formerly director of the McMaster Center for Medical Robotics, dedicated to innovative technologies for remote patient care. Williams became president and CEO of South Lake Hospital, winning awards for creating a workplace culture focused on quality and innovation. Dave Williams is also one of NASA's most accomplished astronauts on the missions Columbia and Endeavour, record-setting the highest number of spacewalks ever performed in a single mission. Upon return, NASA appointed him director of the Space and Life Sciences Directorate, making Williams the first non-American to hold a senior management position. He's currently president and CEO of Leap Biosystems, a leading innovator in AI medical technologies. He's also the author of Defying Limits and a series of children's books, including To Burp or Not to Burp, a guide to your body in space. From outer space to hospital front lines, Dr. Dave Williams provides lessons on defying limits and making the most of every day. Today, he'll share leadership and risk management techniques from his extraordinary life experiences to help inspire peak performance with you and your team. Welcome, Dave. Take us away.
All right. Thank you so much, Teresa. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today, to be able to share some experiences with all of you. Bonjour tout le monde. Ça me fait très grand plaisir d'être ici aujourd'hui. You know, everything has changed in the past 6 months or so. The world is a different place. We've had to figure out new ways of doing keynote presentations. And I'm really excited not only to share some content with you today, but also new ways of being able to share information virtually. Of course, we're all living at home now, working from home, and it's a totally different environment. For today's topic, I thought we'd talk about thriving in an unpredictable world. There's no question that the past 6 months have changed many things for all of us. Basically, we're all in the storm together, but we're in the storm in different boats, and every one of us is having slightly different experiences as we work through the challenges of this current pandemic. I used to say that innovation is critical. The best way to predict the future is to invent the future, this great quote by Ellen Kay. The problem is, how do you invent the future when you don't know what to predict, when something as unpredictable as this current pandemic actually happens? And I think one of the things that's really important to be able to prepare for the unforeseen is something that we might call agility. Corporate agility, the ability to respond to circumstances that we didn't really fully anticipate. When NASA launched the Hubble Space Telescope, we thought it was going to be flawless. We thought it was going to give incredible images of our universe. Little did we realize the mirror would be out of focus and we'd have to figure out how to solve that problem. So agility is something that I think we're all trying to embrace these days, and it's critical to be proactive, to be agile as an individual and agile as an organization. We've got to think about developing the competencies that we need to be able to respond to unforeseen circumstances. And one of the things that I like the most about the International Space Station is we develop what we call expeditionary skills. These are behavioral skills that we teach all of the crew members that are on a long duration mission to help them prepare for the known, but also help them prepare for the unknown. On my last spacewalk, on my last mission, 20 minutes into the spacewalk, the fire alarm for the space station goes off. Needless to say, we're trained for this. We didn't anticipate it was going to happen. We worked through what we were trained to do. It turns out it was a false alarm. Everything was fine. But fundamentally, developing these behavioral skills, understanding the importance of self-care, taking care of ourselves, working together as a team and in small groups, developing our leadership and followership capabilities, and our ability to effectively communicate sometimes tough issues are all critical to enabling us to respond to the unforeseen circumstances that we might experience. COVID, oh my goodness, we are all so tired in talking about COVID. We want to go on and talk about some other things. And I think the response to COVID is going to go on for another few months. But I think it's how we choose to deal with that response that's really important. You know, there's no question that we all have a choice to make. Life is kind of what happens to me, or life is what I make happen. Nobody wanted the circumstances we're in right now, just like when we're on board the International Space Station. If there's a problem, nobody wants that. However, it's how we respond to the circumstances that we're thrown into that really makes a difference. It determines the experience that we have, and in many cases, determines the outcome of what it is that's going to happen. You know, I love to think about the fact that sometimes we all perceive that we're stuck within, you know, the confines of the world in which we see ourselves. And we talk about the importance of thinking outside the box, but we really have to be innovative and willing to try something new to be able to embrace the future. One of the challenges that we're all experiencing right now is living and working from home. And in a situation like that, you know, we're all confronted with trying to figure out, how do we turn our home into a home office? And of course, one of the challenges we experience in this environment is the fact that now we've got to figure out how to work with the technology. It's almost like we're getting sucked into the technology, trying to figure out how to make our computer work, how to incorporate all these new software applications like Zoom and WebEx and Teams and all these different things. These are challenges that we're all facing right now, and that can be stressful for all of us as we learn to adopt to the situation that we're in. So there's no question, agility, our ability to respond, the capability of developing a breadth of skills that will help us for whatever happens in the future is something that's fundamental for all of us. In the space program, we'd like to emphasize the importance of lifetime learning. And in fact, one of the common denominators for all astronauts is that they love learning. We say jokingly, when you start your training, it's like drinking from a fire hose. I remember turning up the first day for training, sitting at my desk, and there's a pile of manuals and literature on my desk. And this is, read this before tomorrow, probably 4,000 or 5,000 pages of material. But we love learning, and learning at this point is so critical for all of us to keep ourselves engaged and focus on developing the skills that we need to respond to the situation we're in, but also be able to broaden our horizons. You know, part of the expeditionary behavior that we have focuses on teamwork. There's no more critical time than today when we're all basically trying to figure out how to do social distancing, where we're living at home with our loved ones. But no matter how much we love our loved ones, after a period of time, 4 to 6 months of being in the same place, it can become stressful. So learning how to get along with each other for long periods of time, whether it's 6 months or a year on board the International Space Station, these are all critical skills that we need to be able to succeed in space that I've actually been able to leverage and use during the current pandemic. Working together in space as a team is a lot of fun. And I think what's interesting is celebrating differences, celebrating diversity. We have astronauts from all over the world, from different countries, coming together to live and work on board the International Space Station. And it's truly a remarkable experience to be able to live in an environment like that. Humor is something that's absolutely fundamental. In fact, if you were to go on Google Scholar and look for evidence in the medical literature of the therapeutic benefit of laughter, you will find that laughter is, in fact, great medicine. It's very helpful for the elderly. It's very helpful for patients that are diagnosed with cancer to improve their overall clinical outcomes. And we use laughter in space. We use it for all sorts of reasons. In this photograph, I'm riding on the end of the Canadarm, 60 feet away from the International Space Station. Charlie Hobaugh, our pilot, was the robotic arm operator. And I'm holding on to a gyroscope that weighs 650 kilograms. It's almost 1,200 pounds with 2 hands. Charlie called me over the air-to-ground loop, so I'm hearing this in the headset of my spacesuit. And he says, "Hey, Dave, just want to remind you that this is not a jettison mission. Don't throw that thing away. And of course, I had to laugh, right? Because something like that, you go, yeah, Scorch, I fully understand. I'm not supposed to throw this thing away. We're supposed to install it on the space station. But humor is something that's really important, to be able to lighten the moment, to be able to relax everyone, de-stress a little bit as we go forward and accomplish these complex tasks. And many people would never think that astronauts in space are going to resort to humor, but in fact, it's one of the things that we embrace the most when we're in space. Appreciating the things that you have. You know, it's not having what you want that's important. It's wanting what you have that really makes a difference. And when you're in space, things like fresh fruit, you don't get it every day. So when you do have an opportunity to get a resupply vehicle that comes and you get fresh fruit and strawberries and things, that's a remarkable opportunity to appreciate what you have. And, you know, during this pandemic and lockdown in the early days, I like soy milk with vanilla flavor. Can you think it was all sold out everywhere. So the first time I was able to buy it was around July. I thought, well, this is absolutely fantastic. But it's not worrying about what we don't have. It's simply appreciating what we do have and the people that are around us that we can celebrate these moments with. It makes such a difference. In space, we focus on wellness. And this is not only physical wellness, it's emotional or behavioral wellness. On Earth, when we train to go to space, we have a lot of emphasis on getting behaviorally or mentally ready to go do a 6-month or a 1-year mission in space. So this whole concept of wellness is now fundamental for all astronauts when they explore space. And I would argue it's something that's critical for all of us as we struggle to deal with the current challenges we're facing. This is a picture of my wellness plan when I was in space the last time, Astro Days wellness plan. I understand quite clearly that life is what I make it, whether I'm on the Earth or whether I'm in space doing spacewalks and helping build the space station. It's really up to me to determine how I respond to the circumstances that I'm in. And I think, you know, the fun part about wellness is it's not just physical exercise. It's not just taking care of your body by sleeping well and eating well and exercising. It's actually taking care of your mind, making sure that you're learning, that you're reading, that you've got recreational activities, whether it's playing music, collecting stamps, whatever it is that you like to do, that you're actually allocating time during your day to being able to do that. Making sure you're taking care of your spirit is absolutely fundamental. We talk about positive emotional energy in space and the ability of an individual to create a positive environment for those around them. It's absolutely fundamental. There's always things to work on, things to learn. One of the first things I learned in this pandemic was how to make a Parisian-style French omelet in a stainless steel pan. That took me a while, and for those of you that know how to do it, you'll know what a challenge that can be. But the whole idea behind this is making sure that we all have a wellness plan, and that when we deal with others, we leave people feeling just a little bit happier than they were when they bumped into us. We have a choice on how we influence other people as to whether or not we create positive emotional energy in people, enable them to laugh, or whether or not we're bringing everybody down. And I know that's tough, but what I've found is if I wake up in a bad mood and I bump into somebody that's in a good mood, it's amazing how that can shift me into being in a good mood again. And positive emotional energy, happiness, and laughter should be contagious. You know, it's amazing how bad moods can be really, really contagious. Let's try and make good moods equally contagious so we can share our joy. So wellness is something that's absolutely critical, but I understood when I turned age 50 that it's hard. It's, you know, sounds easy for us to talk about this stuff, but as many of you know, it can be really hard. I was diagnosed with cancer when I turned 50. I joined a club, we might call it the Cancer Club. Nobody wants to be a member of the Cancer Club, but when you hear those words, you have cancer, you're now immediately a member of this new club. Initially, I thought I was going to die. I'm a doctor, I should know better, but the first 24 hours, I thought, so this is a really terrible diagnosis and it's not going to work out for me. As it turns out, I was able to go for surgery. I lost all my medical exams as an astronaut, as a pilot and everything, but the surgery was successful. I got all my medicals back and I was able to fly in space on my second space flight as a cancer survivor. And that I think is something that's so important. But I learned about brain fog when I was diagnosed with cancer. The fact that I just couldn't remember anything. And, you know, even now during this pandemic, it happens to me as well. Brain fog is basically a situation that we can use to describe the effects of stress. When we get really stressed, we tend to forget things. We're overwhelmed with detail, trying to juggle all this information that we have. So managing our stress the best we can and lowering it to as low a level as possible by doing other things, making sure that we're staying physically fit, that we're getting our sleep, that we're eating well, that we're staying hydrated is absolutely critical in making sure that we're managing and preventing brain fog from actually taking place. As a cancer patient and now a cancer survivor, I learned the critical importance of never losing hope, creating and sharing happiness as best you can, as often as you can, to try and spread that feeling of positive energy amongst the people that you're working with, and also the importance of relentlessly seeking meaning in your life. I actually believe that the most important thing in life is not the pursuit of happiness, it's the pursuit of meaning. Because I don't know about you, but I've never been uniformly happy in my whole life. There's been ups and downs and twists and turns. I can tell you being diagnosed with cancer was not a happy experience, but I learned from all those experiences and enriched my life by getting greater meaning by working through those experiences with resilience, with optimism, trying to figure out what the solution would be. This quote from the Dalai Lama, I think it's probably pretty applicable today. He had this quote a number of years ago, but finding hope in the darkest of days and focusing on the brightest, relentlessly being optimistic and not judging the universe for what happens. What's going on is beyond all of our ability to control, but we can control how we respond to it. And that's one of the big lessons of expeditionary behavior. The choice is up to us, how we go through the current set of circumstances we find ourselves in. Believe it or not, training for spaceflight, relentless optimism is absolutely critical to be able to succeed. When I was diagnosed with surgery, it was really, with cancer, I should say, and had surgery, it was really tough at that time. I had to be relentlessly optimistic. Yeah, this is going to work out. I'm going to be able to get back in shape and go fly in space again. And I was able to achieve that dream in part because of the support that I had from friends, family, loved ones, and my trainers and things, but also an inherent desire to be able to have this happen and an inherent optimism that it would be able to happen. Living and working on board the space station, it's an absolutely unbelievable experience. Of course, we orbit the Earth every 90 minutes. And we're living with crew members from different countries, different cultural backgrounds, all of whom speak different languages. And we truly realize that the world is, in fact, a global village. It's a very small planet. We orbit it every hour and a half, and we see a sunrise and a sunset every 45 minutes. There's no borders that we can see separating countries that are visible from space. And you realize we're all in this together. And whether it's dealing with taking care of the planet and protecting it for future generations, or dealing with the current COVID-19 pandemic, globally, we have to work collaboratively to find solutions. It's the greatest lesson of the space station, and I wish it was easily transferable to Earth. I think it is transferable, but sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge. Let's have a look at a video, because looking at these beautiful images of the Earth is absolutely incredible, but I think showing you a video is more powerful. absolutely incredible to be able to see the planet from such a unique perspective. Spaceflight gave me some of the most incredible moments in my life, looking back at the Earth, this 4.5 billion-year-old planet upon which the entire history of the human species has taken place. And I came to realize that you can live a lifetime in a moment, in a nanosecond, when you see an image as compelling as that. So to me, life is about all those moments that we have. And what we do in those moments determines our legacy. And I think this quote by Thoreau really says it all. The meeting of two eternities, the past and the future, is precisely the present moment. We all have the ability to choose how we cherish those moments, whether it's during a time of a global pandemic, working in space on board the International Space Station, or working as a physician with patients in a hospital. It's those moments that make a difference in our lives. I wrote the book Defying Limits because I wanted to be able to share with people the perspectives that I've developed over my career as an emergency physician, an astronaut, having had a chance to see the planet from such a unique perspective. I'll say the most amazing thing I've ever done is fly in space, but the most meaningful thing I've ever done in my life is actually work as a physician and a hospital CEO, working with teams of dedicated people who want to be there to help those in need during their times of crisis. Thank you so much for having me share my experiences with you today. It's been a real pleasure being able to chat with you virtually. I hope you've enjoyed the technology, and it's really remarkable being able to speak to you from these different platforms. You can pick up Defying Limits on Indigo Online or Amazon. I hope you enjoy it. It's been getting 5-star reviews and things, but I hope all of you really enjoyed today's presentation. And I'll turn it back over to Teresa because I think we have time for some questions.
We do indeed. Thank you, Dave. So many emotions in that presentation, breathtaking, some of the imagery and video that you shared, and inspiring the journey that you've been through and the lessons that you've learned along the way. And clearly there's so much more you could be sharing. So appreciate you condensing it into this short format for so many that we have online here today. And indeed, we do have some questions. Liz asks, given your experience, what coaching recommendations would you give managers or leaders for their staff to keep them motivated given COVID-19 and other work-related challenges?
Coaching is a really important aspect of leadership. I would maybe bridge to the word mentoring as well, because so often when we're coaching, we're aspiring to develop those who are working with us in teams and give them the tools that they need to be able to succeed, to broaden the tools that they have available in their toolkit. Mentoring, I think, is an important element of coaching because it's really important for us to role model the behaviors that we want to be able to see in others. Safety is a great example. You know, at South Lake Regional Health Center, we talked about the importance of hand hygiene, something that sounds fairly mundane, but believe it or not, is not uniformly adhered to in hospitals amongst throughout Canada. And when I first started, the number was quite low. Within 6 months, we were up to 96%. Nobody's 100% perfect. Our number changes every day. But role modeling and mentoring are an important element of coaching, but being able to share those experiences and creating an environment where you can coach is so important.
Thank you so much. And I think some of what you're talking about with the hand washing speaks to consistency and the value of that, which I know you've spoken a lot of. Other questions that have come in, Naomi's wondering about isolation and having lived in such a small space, whether it's as an astronaut or an aquanaut, what tips do you have about getting along with others?
Isolation is a challenge. Arguably in space and living underwater, it's easier than the current situation that we face right now. And it's easier because we know when it's going to end. If you're in space for 6 months, as soon as you get to 6 months, you're ready to come home. It's surprising how that works. And if somebody changes the mission duration, then people get a little bent out of shape. I think the best lesson for COVID that we can take from space is just approach every day as a day and have a plan for the day. Make sure that your daily schedule includes caring for yourself, time for exercise, that you're sleeping well, in addition to balancing time with family and loved ones and work and trying to do your virtual work and that, all of that sort of thing. And that's what we focus on in space. In space, we have a very detailed schedule. We stick to the timeline and that we ground ourselves in the reality of the timeline, because that's it gives us something to orient ourselves to. And every day we're checking the timeline so we know, oh, today is Wednesday and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever, I just had lunch. So I think that's the important element, is create a schedule, focus on wellness, build it into the schedule, and focus on getting the most you can out of every day.
Thank you, indeed. Another question, from your time in leadership positions at the hospitals, can you share some of your lessons around risk management in healthcare?
In healthcare, it's absolutely critical to control risk. To be able to control risk, we have to be able to find the risks, identify the risks, and then come up with checks and balances to control whatever the risk might be. One of the things that we face in healthcare is simply making mistakes. The Institute of Medicine years ago wrote a book called To Err is Human. And often you'll hear senior executives in hospitals talk about eliminating error. I hate to break it to people, but you're never, ever going to eliminate error. What we need to do is reduce the frequency of error. That's great. And the strategies are very similar to trying to eliminate error, but also understanding that when a mistake is made, we prevent that mistake from having consequences to the patients. That's what we do in aviation and commercial aviation. That's what we do in space, is building redundant systems, checks and balances into what we do to make sure that if a mistake is made, there's not going to be any adverse impact from those mistakes.
Thank you. And another question about innovation and some of the work that you're doing now. Can you talk a bit about the work that you're doing now at LEAP and how your history with exploration relates to innovation?
I'm really excited to be CEO of LEAP Biosystems. We're focusing on augmented reality, artificial intelligence solutions. We are willing to fail. And often I will go speak to many companies, some of them Fortune 500 companies, and we talk about innovation. So the first question is, how do you deal with failure? Oh, we don't do failure in this organization. Well, if you're not doing failure, you're actually not innovating. You know, I talk about pushing the edge of the envelope. When you get to the edge of your comfort zone or your envelope, whatever, when you're coming up with new, bold, creative ideas, some of them are going to work and they're going to be brilliant, but some of them, when you implement them, are actually not going to work. And you have to be willing to accept failure, which means you have to understand the whole process of failure and learn how to fail. As a hospital CEO, I didn't want our operating rooms to be an area where failure was tolerated, or what we call a zero fault tolerant environment, for obvious reasons. However, our innovation sandbox, we called it Create It Now at Southlake, where we're working innovatively to develop new ideas for technologies to change the future of healthcare. It's okay if one of those ones doesn't work. We can learn about it, we can regroup, we can make it better and go forward. So understanding that innovation has to embrace a degree of failure. And there's many quotes by Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and other very entrepreneurial individuals about their willingness to embrace failure to be stronger as an organization.
Really appreciate how much information you're able to pack into this session and your quick responses to the questions that have come in. And to our audience, thank you for sharing your thoughts there and the questions that have come to mind. David's been a really insightful session with a lot of takeaways around. I've got notes about the importance of self-care, certainly, being willing to be agile, creating positive emotional energy, and the significance of consistency to help us all find our place for peak performance. So thank you so much. We have so enjoyed seeing you again and seeing you adapt so well to this virtual world, though we'd love to see you in person on stage when the time allows.
Well, it's been my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. And I'd love to see folks on stage when time allows, but until we get there, virtual has been a lot of fun as well. But thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dave. And for our audience, we'll provide a recording of the session for a limited time post-event. If you were in last week's session and missed the recording, it's available till the end of this week, where we brought in a comedian and celebrity chef. So take a look for that. If Dave Williams can help your organization from a leadership, a team building, or appreciation for opportunities and innovation, do reach out to us. And we hope that you stay well and keep defying limits. Take care.